I was going to say, can you give us the latest with Leigh Adams?
Yeah, Leigh had scans on the weekend, so the good thing is there's no new damage. So boys will assess him again today. Our medical people will assess him again today, and hopefully, they can work really well on him this week, and he's a chance to play against the Tigers. So, but that's where it is. We're just going to be one of those things. We'll just assess him as the week progresses. It's a Sunday game, so hopefully we'll get him up.
Was that as a result of the Chris Judd incident, or the one later in the game that caused the most damage?
Yeah, I think he copped a few knocks over the weekend, Leigh. And you see him when he runs out on the ground. He's already taped up. So he's had a few pre-existing shoulder issues, I suppose, that we've tried to manage throughout the year, and a few things got stirred up on the weekend.
So what will you tell the match review panel when they contact you for the medical report for their examination of the Judd incident? Will you say that he got injured in that incident, or will you say that it was a combination of all things that happened on the night?
All will be revealed when the match review panel receive the medical report, because it's not for us to comment on that. And there was a lot spoken about it last week, and I just think there's a process in place which we'll adhere to. So we've just been contacted by the AFL to provide a medical report, so we'll do that today. Our doc will sit down and he'll send that into the AFL, and then they'll let their process take its course.
What was your initial reaction when you saw it?
Oh well, it's the game, I mean, things happen out in the ground, and once they happen, again, I think it's irrelevant what my opinion is. I think it's more relevant that incidents that take place game day that umpires look after, and post game, like we said, there's panels in place that look at things that happen out in the ground, and it's up to them to do what they do. We don't involve ourselves in anything that happens with opposition players, and obviously if our blokes get looked at, then we've got to go to work on trying to mount a good case for them.
So is he more likely to play this week or less likely? Would you put a percentage on it at all?
No, I can't put a percentage on it. So it's, again, we get a lot of players, like Drew Petrie, had a little bit of an incident in the game that he's pulled up a little bit, post-match. He pulled up sore. I mean, at 3/4 time, he was really keen to keep playing. I think that was probably more because Drew kicked 7 and he needed to break his record and kick 8 or 9. But he was super keen about continuing to go, and Steve thought at the time that there was a slight risk if he kept going he might do further damage. So scans revealed that was all good, and he's a good chance to play this week. So again, both Leigh and Drew will just see how they go during the week.
So both far from certain though?
Oh no, they're today is Monday, and by Sunday they might be right. So if they're not right, well then they won't be. So yeah.
No, look, I know it is hard for you to comment re the Chris Judd thing, but your players are obviously very angry with what they saw at the time. Can you understand that?
That's footy, it's an emotional game. Our players are a pretty tight-knit group, and what happens out in the field happens out in the field. And like I said, it's not for me to comment on. It happened. It occurred during the game. It was a fantastic game. I mean, both sides were 100 mile at it. You're going to get things that occur in those games that get people stirred up, because you've got two sides that are playing for pretty big stakes. So I don't know. We walk away and happy we got the 4 points, and we just focus on Richmond this week.
Was that in the spirit of the game though, what Chris did?
It's not for me to decide.
I guess what the fans are trying to find out though is whether or not Leigh sustained the damage from that incident or from the other incidents. Are you able to expand on that at all to give us some kind of definitive answer on that as to how much damage he sustained in the Judd incident? Yeah,
I think that we were all at the game, and there's been a lot of media since the incident took place, and it's been reported on. Leigh had to come off the ground, and he went down to rooms, and he got his shoulder assessed, and he went back on the ground. So I just think they're the facts. So he went off the ground, he got his shoulder checked out, and the boys got him back out on the ground. So he continued to play. So if he couldn't continue to play, then there would be a really serious issue. So, but he copped another knock later in the game, which really compounded his the pre-existing injury he already had. So, yeah, that's what it was.
Did it compound on top of the Judd incident as well, though, I guess is the question, or did it just compound on his original injury?
He's got a sore shoulder.
You,
Keep going. It's good.
are you concerned you might be without Jack Zeeble this week? I mean, that incident's obviously going to
Again, you know, like, we couldn't be more prouder of the way Jack Zeeble goes about his footy. I mean, he's an inspiration to his teammates, and you know, he's been, you know, a huge factor in the way where we've turned our season around. You know, so yeah.
So Drew's injury, Donald, is that just a slight groin strain?
Yeah, he's got a he just overstretched. So whether it's, you know, groin, abductor, so it's just that region. But again, he's definitely sore, but it's not through a tear or anything like that. So it's just going to be an injury that needs to be managed throughout the course of the week, and you know, we're really optimistic he'll be right to play this week.
Just the last month, the side's form overall, did you sort of see this coming, or as a group you're almost pleasantly surprised at how quickly you've turned your season around?
Look, the thing about our season is we've had one really poor result. You know, that was against the Hawks. I mean, I think, you know, we played West Coast and Sydney away, and I thought we were real credible on those occasions. We didn't win. You know, a lot was said about the Western Bulldogs game, but we're not going to be disrespectful to the Doggy because they played really well. So it was like a 3-goal defeat. So I just think that, you know, we got to the mid-year break and we the coaching staff sat down and had a really good look at how we're going about things, and more importantly, I think the players really took some ownership over where they were at, and worked really closely with Brad. And you know, I think it's been terrific the way the whole group have responded and worked extremely hard together. You know, focused on the things we need to focus on. You know, we'd been doing some really good stuff earlier in the year as well, but there were areas of our game we just had to tinker with, and they have. So. But, you know, all we've done is we're not in the 8 as we sit here. We've got an enormous amount of work to do. But the great thing is it's in our hands, you know. So, you know, we've got a huge game against Richmond this week. You know, another side that, you know, you can see Damien Hardwick's response post-match. I mean, he was really, you could just see the disappointment. But then again, you know, we could have been sitting in that same situation because our game against Gold Coast went right down to the wire. So this week's game is going to be on. You know, Martin comes back into their side. You know, I'm sure Marek and these sort of blokes will be right. So we're really looking forward to it. It's another great challenge, and it's just awesome for our supporters that the season's, you know, right on for us.